Good.
And I'll go ahead and record the session. So welcome everybody to Business of Art. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, this evening. This is going to be the first session in kind of an ongoing series that's really designed to help you with your professional development in the creative industries. So obviously, you don't have to be a visual artist to benefit from these sessions. You could be a performance artist. You could be somebody who, is a music producer, any kind of creative industries. This program is hopefully really going to be beneficial for you as you're growing and maybe starting a new creative business. So to begin with, we kind of wanted to give you a little bit of context around why we've decided to restart or relaunch this program at this particular time. Some of you might know that we actually launched the Business of Art in 2017. So this is kind of a revamp of the program in some ways. So you may know that in March and April, we actually put out a survey to the artists and creatives in our community as kind of a response to the COVID pandemic and the way that it's impacted a lot of businesses in the community and obviously globally as well. So we had 98 participants for that survey. So we had a lot of really great feedback. And some of the feedback that came out of that was there was a kind of concern around obviously the way that this would affect artists' income, but also a real need for professional development opportunities. And so Business of Art is kind of one of the ways that we're responding to that. We also have an artist grant program, which some of you may have received emails about as well. And then we're also offering opportunities for sort of advice sessions to work with other grant opportunities too. So we're really excited about Business of Art, and we hope that it's going to be something really beneficial for you all as artists and as business owners in Cayman and in the creative industries too. So with that, I want to kind of lead into introducing our speaker tonight. So Joy Baldridge is the president of Baldridge Seminars International, which is a sales and training organization with the goal of helping the best to become even better at increasing productivity and revenue while reducing frustration and stress. So with that, Joy, I will hand it over to you to start the Sales 101 talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here.
Hi.
So I'm going to share with you what I call Secret Weapon Selling 101. And I've been in the sales profession since birth. I'm exhausted. My parents founded a learning and development company before I was born, and they were driven entrepreneurs. And my mother always kept telling me that you have to sell, you have to sell. I said, I don't want to sell. I said, I'm not interested in sales. I'm a psychology major. And she said, yes, but without sales, you have nothing. And I said, oh my gosh, I guess I should try to sell something then. So she brought me home from spring break from college, and she said, why don't you try to sell our speed reading program? We had a college level, business level speed reading program. I said, okay, who do you want me to call? And she said, the president. I said, the president of what? And she said, our country. I said, you want me to call a president? Why? And I was 19 years old. I was studying psychology. I didn't want to be in sales. And she opens the New York Times and she says, look, he needs us. I said, what does the article say? It says the president wants to read faster. We have a speed reading company. Call him. I said, you have his number? I thought she had lost her mind. She said, yes, it's public. So I called the White House and called the president. Well, he wasn't there, thank goodness. But somebody answered and said, send information, and we did. And 6 months later, we got a call from the White House. And it wasn't the president, but it was somebody who worked for the president and said they were very interested in our speed reading program. And next thing you know, I'm teaching in the Indian Treaty Room in the White House how the president's staff can read his mail faster. And I thought, how did this happen? And my mother said, it's sales. And there's a quote from Louise Hay that someone somewhere is looking for exactly what you have to offer, but unless you make connections or look for ideas or see that there's a new opening of a hotel perhaps that maybe you can meet the curator or the designer and see if you can get some of your artwork in that facility, it's all about making connections. So I'm going to make it a lot easier for you by giving you all the basics. And I was #1 in every sales job I've ever had ever since. I have about 30 years of sales experience. Out of 100 people, I still managed to be #1 by doing everything I'm sharing with you this evening. So this is a crash course, but you're a master class, so I think you can handle it. First step, stay positive, because this Corona coaster that we're all riding is going up and down and up and down, and it's even more nerve-wracking than usual. But remember, even though it's uncertain out there, always remember, when nothing is certain, anything is possible. So the first thing we want to talk about when we talk about Sales 101 is you have to control the controllables, because there's so many things you cannot control. Very important to ask yourself, can I control this? And what can I control? And I was watching an interview of a famous baseball player in the US named Jim Abbott. He was famous because he pitched a no-hitter for the Yankees, which means that nobody got a hit out of the whole 9 innings of the game. And what was more incredible was he was born with one hand. So he made it to the major leagues of baseball, and he only had one hand, and he made it to be a pitcher, and then he didn't know better.
It's very disrespectful.
I think we need to mute.
Hi everyone, if I could just remind you to mute your microphones if you're not already muted, please.
Thank you. And so his mentor said to him, as he was really learning the ropes and becoming an all-star champion athlete, his mentor said, there are going to be so many things you can't control, but there are 2 things you can always control. And the 2 things you can always control are your attitude and your effort. So your attitude towards helping people to have your beautiful artwork, and your effort towards connecting with people and finding those who need it. So don't forget, attitude and effort are vitally important. And keep in mind that those at the top of the mountain didn't fall there. What they did was they made connections, they practiced, they rehearsed. Sometimes we get a little nervous and worried when we talk about selling. Not everybody likes sales. Some people say it's a 4-letter word. I think it's a really great way to connect and make friends and meet people and help people have what you give them, what you have, and then you can find out what they need, and it becomes a win-win relationship. So no worry, no anxiety, no fear. Get rid of your WAPs right now. Say goodbye to worry. So goodbye anxiety, and so long fear, because there's no place for that. So don't worry, be happy. You want to cut the worry wires right now. Cut the worry wires. The sales can be a lot of fun as long as you're flexible and adaptable. Flexible and adaptable. I have a little friend here. His name is Bob. You might have seen him on Island. He's flexible and adaptable. Nothing bothers him. That's because he can bend without breaking, and he can adjust to circumstances beyond his control. So if anything goes wrong, you call somebody and they say they're not interested, or someone said they were going to purchase something from you, and then all of a sudden it's starting to change. You just tell yourself, I'm flexible and adaptable. Nothing's going to bother me. AFA all the way. Always flexible and adaptable. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a quote from Louise Hay. It's important to believe that someone somewhere is looking for exactly what you have to offer. You just have to connect. You just have to find them. So when I was starting out in sales like 25 years ago, I was very nervous. I was starting a new position in sales. And one of my best friends, Mark Riesenberg, said, Joy, you should walk with confidence in the direction of your dreams. Act as though it were impossible to fail. And he said, this is a really good mantra. And you're welcome to take any pictures of these slides that I'm sharing, and we can forward you the slides. So I would say to myself every day, I walk with confidence in the direction of my dreams. I act as though it were impossible to fail. And I've given that advice to many people who are going into sales, or entrepreneurs, or wanting to make some connections to make a living at what they love, what they're good at, what their passion is. And keep in mind, this has helped many, many people by just saying this every day, writing it down. I walk with confidence in the direction of my dreams. I act as though it were impossible to fail. So here are some sales essentials. I boiled it down to the most essential elements to being success at sales, and those are these. Those who prepare most win. Those who prepare most win. So prepare means think about who you want to sell to. Prepare your marketing campaign. Prepare how you want to display your art. Prepare by thinking all the different places that you can actually show your work. Those who prepare most win. That's number one. Number two, essential in sales, is those who ask the questions have the power. Those who ask the questions have the power. If you just talk, you're not going to find out what the person likes, what they need, what's important to them. You got to ask the questions. So I'm giving you some of my favorite questions, high gain questions, in just a few more slides. You're going to get a sample of some of those questions that you can ask. And if we go back to number 1, those who prepare most win. Most people, even the most seasoned sales professionals, they don't prepare questions to ask when they go and meet people, talk to people, do a Zoom call about what they're selling. So it's really important to know questions number 1 and number 2 are linked. You need to prepare, but in addition to all the preparation that you normally would do, you must prepare questions, because those who ask the questions have the power. Those who are answering the questions, not so much, because you learn when you ask questions. You get to size someone up. You get to understand what they like and what they don't like, instead of just saying how great this painting is, or how great anything that you do in the arts is. Anybody can say how great they are, but if someone doesn't value it, then what's the point? They don't care about it. So you have to ask questions to find out what people are truly valuing. So it's very important. Those who prepare most win. Those who ask the questions have the power. And then finally, people are persuaded most by their own words, not by your words. So keep in mind the words they're saying. So if you ask a question and say, what did you find out of these 3 paintings, for instance, which one really speaks to you or stands out? And then the person might say, well, what struck me about this is the vibrancy of the colors. And so you want to not mimic somebody. It's a finesse communication that I'm talking about. But then see if you can use vibrancy or colors or struck in your next sentence. So you can say, oh, I'm so glad that the colors really spoke to you, that they really struck you. What do you like about the vibrancy? What does that mean to you and the home that you're designing, for instance? So see if you can use some of their words. I did a sales program for a jewelry manufacturer, and they designed and sold jewelry. So maybe that's your art. And they were saying, someone came in after they learned this in my seminar, and they were putting on the diamond ring, the engagement ring. And the first thing the person with the engagement ring said was, wow, it really sparkles. And so the person who is the salesperson and the artist said, yes, it certainly does. And if you want to see sparkle, come to the natural light and you won't believe how much it will sparkle there. So she's not trying to mimic the person, but if it sparkles, it sparkles. That's what it means to them. So you don't have to use all the word over and over again, but see if you can use words that people say to you, because it builds a bridge, makes a connection, and then they will subliminally be more relating to you. So those who prepare most win. Those who ask the questions have the power, and people are persuaded most, not by your beautiful work, but by their own words. So here are some sales essentials, and I'll go over each one individually. This is how you become really good at really exchanging your art for monetary purposes or barter or trade or whatever way you're looking to sell. So the first is, it's very important to know that people buy from people they like and trust. So if you're trustworthy and likable, people will be more inclined to buy from you. Sometimes people have one, but not both of these characteristics. Have you ever were about to purchase something from somebody, and you liked them very much, but you just didn't trust them, and you didn't trust that they knew what they were talking about, or they were not really being sincere in the way they were talking? Or maybe you really trusted them implicitly because they were experts at what they were talking about, but you just didn't like them. You didn't feel like they were being nice and personable and kind. And so keep in mind that people buy from people that they like and trust. So you have to be knowledgeable so that you can be trustworthy and sincere, of course, and honest and authentic. And then you also have to be likable, which isn't easy for every person. I mean, some people are naturally likable or charismatic, and others, they're more detail-oriented. They may not smile as much, or they may not use good eye contact when connecting with someone on Zoom or in person. And so you might want to think of what makes someone likable. Usually it's someone who's patient, a good listener, someone who smiles, someone who cares, asks questions, and helps people. So likability and trustability and being trustworthy are two vital essentials for sales. And then the number one job of the sales professional is to help people think and improve. Help people think and help them improve. So for instance, maybe you're speaking to a designer about some artwork and you want it in someone's home, or you want it in a hotel or in a condo complex in the halls. So you have to first help them think by asking them questions about the space that they're trying to fill and the mood that they want to create and what else is going to be in that space. You see, now you can help them think more about the decision they're making. And then you help them improve by aligning what you have to offer with what they're starting to explain to you that they think might be good. So you might say, well, tell me about the space, and they might, how big is it? How big would you like the piece to be? They say, oh, I want it to be like 12 inches by 12 inches. And then you say, oh, okay, well, here's 3 different choices. Which one is really striking you as being the best? So again, I'm asking questions, and that helps them to think and improve by picking the right piece for the right space. So it says, how do you help people think and improve? You ask questions and then you listen. So the trilogy is question, listen, align. You ask questions to find out what their needs are and what they value and what they're thinking and what they want. And then you listen by not talking, not finishing sentences, not jumping ahead or assuming anything. Just listen. And then you align what they're saying they want with what you have to offer. So that's question and listen, question, listen, and align. Now, here's something I find people do quite often, no matter how experienced they are or inexperienced. Never say no for the customer. Never say no for the buyer. And what I mean by that is sometimes we might talk to somebody and they say their budget is pretty small. And then we think, oh, well, they can't afford it, or they're going to try to, get me down on price, and I have price integrity. We start to think all these things. And instead of just asking questions once again, like, what's the range of your budget? Because maybe they think their budget is small at $5,000 because they've bought artwork that was $20,000. You don't know what their frame of reference is. And so sometimes we say no for people, or we don't make that follow-up phone call because we think, oh, they probably won't be interested. That's when our confidence starts to wane, or we feel uncomfortable approaching people. Maybe you're not even an extroverted type, you're an introverted type. It makes it harder to follow up. But keep in mind that so many times I've heard people talk themselves out of a sale because they said no for the customer. If the customer or the buyer says no, that's one thing, and that might be an objection, and we can handle that. We can talk about that in the negotiation program. That's the next time we meet. But keep in mind, a lot of people say no for the buyer because they don't follow up, and they think the person just can't afford it, or they're just thinking they're not going to be interested because they didn't seem to express an interest in the work, or they said negative things about the work and you think they don't like it. Sometimes that's a negotiation tactic, to say negative things so that you feel a little unsettled, and then they lower the price. So never say no for your buyer. Just listen for buying signals, ask questions, and let them say no or yes. Agree to disagree. So what if they do say no? They say, well, I don't think this is right for the space. And you can say that's true, or that may be true. So you agree, you see, agree. That may be true, or I can see how you feel this way. And then you use a magical word, unless. Unless is so magical because I call it the flip-flop of communication. You can agree, you know what, that might be true. That is a small space, unless I create a custom piece that we can make smaller for you. Or what if? Oh, the color isn't going to work with the color scheme. That's probably true, at the way it looks now and the swatches you've given me, it doesn't seem to work. What if we did this? So that's what agree to disagree means. And it is a very useful tool in sales, because the worst thing you can say as the first thing is, okay, bye. Okay, bye. Okay, thanks. Oh, thanks for your time. Okay. Because we get really defensive. And that's like saying no for the customer. Okay, bye. Okay. Instead, you want to say, okay, why to yourself, not okay, bye. And the okay, why is, that may be true, unless we go this direction. That may be true. What if we do that? How about this? How about is another way to flip-flop the communication so that you can overcome the objection. Listen to it, acknowledge it, and sometimes agree with it. And then see if you can maneuver it into another direction by using unless, what if, or how about. Asking for commitment is something very few people do because they just don't know how. They think if they had a really great meeting that they've got a sale. This happens a lot of people, especially artists. Someone says, I love your work, it's so beautiful. And then they go home and they say, oh, I know this one's gonna sell. They love my work, it's so beautiful. They can visualize it, having it. But that's not a sale. A sale doesn't really happen until you ask when. When are you going to buy? Or when can we run the charge card? Or when, can we sign the papers, or whatever it is? When is action? So ask for commitment. Some people are a little shy on doing that. So there's a pre-close. When is a close? This is closing the conversation, closing the communication to get action to buy. But if when is too far ahead to the sale, you could say, when can we meet again? When can I meet your partner? When can I meet your wife? When can I meet your husband? When can we meet for a second time? Again, asking questions all along the way furthers the success of a sale. Selling is no more than question and listening, and then aligning what you have to offer, finding the value. So if you want a little softer pre-close to the when, you could say at the end of talking to somebody, what's the likelihood that you would like to purchase this? The word likelihood is a nice word. My father was a linguist, and our family's been studying words for over 30 years. And what's nice about likelihood, it just means the chances, the probability, and it's not aggressive. It's a very soft way to ask a question about someone's intentions. And I've advocated saying, what's the likelihood as a pre-close before we do the when? And I've gotten so many emails back, people telling me it really, really works. So I recommend highly that you use, what's the likelihood that we could work together? And when might that be? You can use them together. What's the likelihood we could work together, and when might that be? Because they might want a mural for their home, or they might want a very intricate piece of jewelry, or they may want a performance. I had some dancers come, Latin dancers. They did tango and all kinds of fun things. My father's 80th birthday. They came in my kitchen, and my parents, we had an open concept, and my parents were sitting at the table, and all of a sudden the doorbell rang, and these two people said their car broke down. It was part of our trick. And my father said, oh, do you want to use our phone? And they said, oh, yes. And they came in the kitchen to use the cell phone. And then I pushed the music, and they just started dancing in the kitchen. They were very professional dancers. I paid them to celebrate my dad's birthday. And so they were artists too, performing artists. And I paid them for them to dance in my kitchen. So it just shows you that there's opportunity everywhere. My father said he felt like he was back at the White House. He said their performance was just incredible to just have for him and my mom and me and another couple. So what's the likelihood and when are some closing questions, and the follow-up. When I hired the dancers, I got busy and I didn't have time to follow up with them, and nor should I. That's not my job. But the woman in this couple of dancers, she would email me and call me and touch base and ask what she should wear, and ask, what our budget was and how long were they going to be there. And she asked all these questions. She kept following up. We put a date on the calendar. That's the when. So follow up, follow up, follow up. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but it takes about 7 to 9 follow-ups to get a sale. So initially you meet, whether it's through introduction or they see a piece in the gallery or they hear about you or they look at your Facebook postings or Instagram or TikTok or anything that you do to promote your art. That's one. And then from there, you got to talk to them and find out what their needs are. That's 2. And then all of a sudden you start running out of reasons to touch base with them. You don't want to be pushy, and people think, oh, I don't want to be in sales, and has such a bad connotation. But that's just when you start losing the sale. So you follow up for different reasons. And here's some key follow-up words. They're not on the slide because I want you to write them down. You follow up by saying wondering or curious. You call or you send an email, and the subject could say, just wondering, ... Who wouldn't open an email that says just wondering? It just makes it very simple. Just wondering if you've had a chance to look at my portfolio. Just wondering if you've gone online to my website. Just wondering. That's how it works. So you also have to, in addition to everything above on the slide, you have to possess passion, enthusiasm, determination, and knowledge. Passion, enthusiasm, determination, and knowledge. And I know you possess passion or you wouldn't be creating the art that you do. I'm sure you're enthusiastic about it. Sometimes when we're enthusiastic, we talk too much and we don't ask good questions. So be careful with the enthusiasm and determination in a nice way, not in a desperate way or an aggressive way, but just never giving up, and knowledgeable of your craft and the work that you do, and having a story behind it. People love to hear a story behind something. So again, never give up. It's Churchill's the classic saying during World War II, never, never, never give up. And they didn't, and it saved the UK. So enjoy the process. Before I move on to the next list, which is just a list of questions that you can have, I just want you to see if there's anything on here that you like the most. And at the end, during Q&A, I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite, if you have a favorite? So you can't do all of them. You don't have to do all of them. Some you might naturally already do. But in the business of art, you have to do a lot of these elements in order to be successful. So you may want to jot down any of your favorites, and we'll go on to the next. Here are some questions. And again, these are questions that I started asking when I started out in sales. I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know what sales was. I didn't know it was questioning. I thought you just charm people and talk a lot about what you have to offer. That's not sales. So here's some questions like, what's most important to you? That's a great question, because then you find out what they value. And why is that? And is there anything else? Get some talking. You don't talk. You ask these open-ended questions. And my favorite question is really? Really? Tell me more. Really? Why is that? I really want this. Really? What do you like about that? Like really, really works. It's a conversation extender, according to the Listening Institute. What do you like about? What interests you most? What's the first word you think of when you think of purchasing whatever it is you're selling? What's the first word? It's a word association. They might say exciting. They might say terrifying, because they don't want to make a mistake and pick the wrong thing and spend the money. So whatever they say, whether it's a good or a bad word in your mind, don't be rattled by it, because it's going to get you to understand what they value and what they like. And it could be very different than what you value and what you like about your own work. And then you can say, tell me. Tell me is not a question, but it is a command, and it gets people talking. You can even say so before tell me. So tell me about what you've bought before, and are you a collector, or is this some random piece? Is this a gift? And tell me your thoughts. You want to read someone's mind? Ask them what their thoughts are. So what are your thoughts about this? That's how you read a person's mind. You got to ask. Dream with me a moment. If budget was no object, if money was no object, what would you buy? What do you like the best? Let's put the price tags away. That gets a lot of attention and results, because once you get them dreaming with you and you take away the money, and we're going to talk about this more in the next session about negotiation, then they're free to think of all the things they love and would do with your beautiful work. And then people buy on emotion. They don't buy on logic. They'll have a credit card that has enough on it that they could charge this, or they can, afford it, things they can't afford. Have you ever bought something you couldn't afford? And so dream with them and get the emotion going. And you just say, well, let's dream a minute. What would you do if you had unlimited dollars? What would you take? What would you buy? What do you love? And then we'll try to make, the dream a reality. What dollar range did you have in mind? I like the word range, because when they see one price, it's gridlock, and you want the range, you want flexibility. So to summarize, you got to summarize your conversations with people on the phone, in the Zoom calls, or when you meet with them as you come out of this coronavirus quarantines. And when can we reconnect? Always reconnecting. Never let it just, oh, it was so nice meeting you. Oh, I had the best time. I love your art. Oh, thanks. I'm so glad you appreciate it. Oh, that'll lose everything. You can't do that. You've got to add, when can we reconnect? So what's the likelihood that you'd like to acquire some of these pieces? So what's the logical next step? So these are some good questions. And then active listening. I'm going to give you the listening quiz the next time we meet, but the bottom line is don't speak. Don't speak. Ask the question and stop. And sometimes I even bite my tongue. I literally bite my tongue when I'm selling. I'll say, so what do you think about this? And I buy it. No one can tell, because it stops me from talking. So this is the last slide before we start wrapping up, and that is keep track. The MAP system of goal setting is a way to keep track, and you can recreate this system. Take a picture of it now, or we'll send you the slides. But for your outreach, there's calls, there's emails, there's marketing and introductions. I was reintroduced to Natalie through Caitlin, who's on this webinar, and that was an introduction. That's why I'm here. So introductions can get you sales, right? Marketing can get you sales. You're going to learn a lot more about that as the series evolves. Emails can get you sales. A phone call got me to the White House, speaking in the Indian Treaty Room, because the president had an article in a newspaper. So look around and decide, what is your mandatory number of calls or emails or marketing or introductions that you want in a day or a week or a month, and keep track. It's a very simple system. The mandatory 2 calls a day, the advanced 4 calls a day, the premium 8 calls a day. I'm going to call 8 people. Last Friday, I decided I was going to call 20 people, and I sat on my chair and I called until I finished. It took me an hour and 10 minutes to call 20 people. I left 15 voicemails. I got a hold of 3 people, and I had 2 wrong numbers that they disconnected or changed. So you got to keep track of your numbers so that you know how you're doing. This is a nice chart for that. It's very simple, and these are your categories for your outreach. So the most important thing about Sales 101 is you must be kind to yourself and, of course, others. Be kind to yourself, and don't be worried about when you're going to get that next sale. If you do everything I've just explained, believe me, you will be getting sales, because you're going to understand what people value and you're going to offer value to them, and they'll gladly pay for it. So my goal tonight was to bring more joy to your world, because it can be tough. But you know what? Then you recover. But then it's tough again. Then you recover again. And that's life, but that's also sales. You get a sale, you lose a sale. You get a sale, you get another sale. You never know what's behind someone's intentions and what they're going to do. But if you keep following up and asking questions, listening and aligning, you're going to be really, really successful. So danger is always going to be out there. And you're going to have to fight things like adversity and negative thoughts and things that don't go the way you thought that they would. And you got to wrestle those alligators down and do whatever it takes, no matter what, in order to earn the right, and it is a right, to hang in the jungle and enjoy your craft and enjoy getting paid for the beautiful work that you produce. It's a right to have that passage, and you get it through question, listen, align. That's sales. So this just in, we're on a Corona coaster. There are ups and downs in the pandemic, and it's okay if you're flexible and adaptable and make some positive changes. So all I'd like you to do as a result of this webinar is to think of 1 thing, maybe 2 things you can do differently based on your own business acumen, based on the way that you go about approaching people, and say yes to that. Say yes to contacting people, because it's all in the approach. if you approach people and call them and say, I was just wondering if we could talk about, I was just curious if you would be interested in seeing some of the work that I just created. I was wondering if we could meet, if we could set up a Zoom call, if we could put something on the calendar. These are all very nice ways of getting the action going. So take action on something I've mentioned and think, what's one thing I can do to further my success as a person who is selling the beautiful art or the beautiful work that I'm creating? Because beautiful, meaningful art happens because of you. You are the creator of that art, and you can make someone's day. You can make someone's life. My brother is a professional photographer. He went to the School of Visual Arts at NYU, and he's now in Mexico. He's been traveling the world. He's taken photographs of the Dalai Lama and Christopher Reeves when he was alive, and so many people. And when I see his work, and I have some of his work in my home, I've been looking at it for 20 years, and I still marvel at the way he got the expression on that face or that background so beautiful compared to the contrast of the foreground. I just love it every time I look at it, and it's been over 20 years. So you can do that for people, but you can't do it if you don't have outreach, if you don't meet people in person or on Zoom or on the phone or through email. You don't ask people for introductions and reach out to them. It's such a sad thing, but no one will see or appreciate your art. So bring some joy, and meaningful, beautiful art will happen because of you. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy.
You're welcome.
And I think with that, we will lead into a Q&A segment. So if anyone does have a question for Joy, I think you can go ahead and jump in if anyone has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, usually with following up, I would probably stop at 2 or 3 attempts.
Yes.
And often, if I think back, sometimes that's been successful and sometimes it hasn't. But I like your idea of persisting up to 9 attempts, because that sounds to me as though it might lead to some success.
It will. Just don't do it all in one day.
Okay, so you spread it through the week.
You spread it through the week. You spread it through the month. I've had some sales take even a year. I met a man on an airplane, and he said he really believed in sales training. And I called him. See, what happens is if you end each call properly, you have the permission to follow up. So then I would say, oh, what are the next steps, and when should we reconnect? And they always tell you, the next step is this, and why don't we reconnect in a week? And sometimes I'll say, oh, good, I'll send you an invite. And then as soon as you get off the phone, you send the invite so that it's in their calendar. And then they have to like adjust the schedule or cancel it to not talk to you. But people don't do that. That's not aggressive. It's just saving them time and helping them remember, right?
Sometimes, I mean, on the island, we have different scenarios of sales. Like sometimes I'll be in a hotel environment and people I'm talking to are just there for a couple of days.
That's right.
Other places, like there'll be an exhibition, I'll be talking to people at the exhibition with my piece of work behind me.
Yes.
So there's quite a few varieties of sales situations, I think, on this island.
Absolutely. And I've been on island for 5 years. I just happen to be in Connecticut now. I have a business there, so I'm familiar with how transient people are, and they come and they go. And also there is a kindness to the island where people will be nice and say positive things, but might not have the intention to purchase, right? Human kindness, right? And I find that there is a universal truth to sales, and that is whether they're there for 2 days or a month. Sometimes it's better that they're only there 2 days because it gives you a closer deadline to potentially finish the transaction. So there's pros and cons to it.
Yes, yeah.
And so to your point, though, people people in the States and all over the world, they speak all over the world, they don't know what to do after the third point of contact. They meet the person, they say they're going to follow up, they send a quote, then they follow up on the quote, and then it's like, well, now what do I do? So now you just say, just wondering if you had a chance to look at the quote. Curious if we could set up, when we could set up our next meeting. Oh, here's a cartoon I thought you would like. Sometimes I send a cartoon. It's about art, or it could be about anything that pertains to what you are talking about. I could send an AOK. AOK means always offer knowledge. So you could send an article about one of their favorite artists or about the appraisal process. So there's always something you can do to follow up, but we always think we have to follow up to get a sale. But you're really following up to build the trust and likability.
That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Did anyone else have a question that they wanted to ask?
Well, it was just an observation, really, Joy. What's really helped me is I have a lot of people come up to the studio, and after a little, you know, how are you, where are you from? I tend to be very quiet when they're in the studio so they can look at the art, and I don't interrupt them at all. But when you were saying help people think and improve by asking questions, you know, what do you like? What are you looking for? It's, you know, what do you prefer? What kind of art? So I think that's really helped me to think about, you know, using more conversational questions, you know, when I do meet people.
Absolutely. And I like the really, tell me more, or really, how so? Because then that extends the thought. Because sometimes when you help someone think, their first thought is wrong. So when you say, really, how so? Or really, tell me more about that, then they change their mind. And now you've helped them think, right? Because you always wonder, they said they were interested in this and then they don't buy it. And you wonder what happened. Well, you didn't help them think. And when you help them think, it helps them improve. So when I started out in sales, I only had 3 questions I got from Tony Robbins. You know, what's most important to you about, why is that, anything else? So I would ask, what's most important to you about, why is that, anything else? I didn't know what else to ask. And so my client said, I feel like I'm in therapy. Like, he got all because when you ask questions, you have the power. So now you have to be careful how you use the power, not to rapid fire the questions, have just a couple in your back pocket. I like, what do you envision? That's a question that I find quite useful too.
Yeah, thank you. I think I missed out big time yesterday because I had a lady who was absolutely in love with one picture. And what I should have done was said to her, you know, what is it you personally like about it? And I just kind of left it, and, you know, they kind of milled around and left. So I've learned a lot.
And you don't have their phone number?
No.
They were kind of, so that's another thing I find in the art world. They tend to have a sign-in book. And it's very important, you know, and it just says name, email, date, time. And that way you could say, oh, please sign in and then enjoy the gallery. I mean, the least they can do is give you an email when they sign in.
Yeah. In fact, one of my very good customers asked me why I didn't have a sign-in book. And so I know it's something that I definitely need to do.
Because then you could actually go back, because you do have a second chance to make a good first impression if you have their contact info. You could say, oh, you know, I just thought about you. Well, people like to be thought about. I just thought about you today. You just popped into my mind, and I thought that we should have a quick chat about, you know, this or that. And then you can have a second chance to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Another key word is noticed. You know, you can say, I noticed that you've been spending a lot of time more so in front of this painting versus the others, and I'm wondering. See, noticed and wondering, very soft, good words. And I'm wondering what's holding you here. And they might be like, oh, I was just thinking about my daughter and I have to reach her at college. I mean, be prepared for anything. You might think they're loving this work and they're standing and staring when they might be totally spaced out and thinking about something completely different. So don't assume anything, right? Ask questions, then you find out.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a website. It's a Wix driven, and it allows me to chat with people that just log on to my website.
Yes.
How should I approach that? When should I just say, "Hi, welcome to the, website, my website. How can I help you?" or something like that, or
Yeah.
how should I approach that? Because they're on there, but I'm not even sure who they are.
Right.
It's just
So you, well, what I try to avoid is a cliche, because if I go to a department store and they say, can I help you? I'm probably going to say something you guys would say. What would you say if someone said, can I help you? What would you say?
no.
I'm looking.
No,
I'll
you
call you when
looking?
I'm ready.
I'm browsing.
I'm browsing, no thanks.
Yeah.
So that's where the cliche question gets the cliche answer. You'll probably get a lot of people saying, no, I'm just popping in, I'm just looking, whatever. But instead it's like, welcome to my website. I'm always curious what drew you to this site and what kind of art you really enjoy. Something like that, right? And then they may not answer at all. They may be like, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. And they may leave. But control the controllables. If they leave and you think, oh, I'll never do that again, then don't. But you made this beautiful site. It cost you money. It took you time. The art is there. So draw them in by asking questions. Thanks for visiting my site. I always wonder what is drawing people to it. What's drawing you? And then they'll say, oh, I Googled XYZ, so now you know what they're putting in their search engine, right? And then where you popped up in that search engine. Or my friend gave me your website. Oh, what's your friend's name? You see, conversational selling is the name of the game. Conversational selling. Ask questions, listen, talk. Does that help?
That helped. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
welcome.
because I was just clicking on the little thing that Wix gave me where it said welcome. Like you said, it's a store cliche type thing that people do. But I guess, I should make it unique and make it my own.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. It's just that it's what everybody else does. And I think you deserve more than that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any further questions? Anyone else?
I had a question. I was noticing when you were talking that I was trying to put myself in the buyer's shoes, like what would I experience if I was, if I was them, if I was going to Simone's website, what would I want to experience? Do you have any tips for maybe how that can help you develop your own sales practice? So like things you can do maybe even online or in person that can help you?
That does what?
Just some tips that can help strengthen your sales approach by acting as a buyer.
I see. Well, it's nice to put yourself in the buyer's shoes to some degree, because you want to make sure that you're not being pushy, which I don't think anyone on this call would be, or that you're making someone feel welcomed and invited. I mean, that's why a lot of salons and showrooms have now the coffee machines, and they have the champagne, and they make people feel very welcome and inviting, as opposed to just trying to sell them something. I think when you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, the most important concept to keep in mind is you want to genuinely, sincerely care about who they are and help them to find what they're looking for. Because some people just want a sale. I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday. He's in customer service at a Lexus dealer, and he left his last Lexus dealer because all they cared about was the money. All they cared about was figuring out a way to charge people for things, as opposed to figuring out ways to solve a problem or be the solution. A thing you can say that I think would be very useful is to say you'd love to be the go-to person to help them with their art decision making. And a go-to person gives a lot of options, not just their own, but when yours is one of 2 or 3 options, then you have a very good chance and you keep your credibility. The problem with putting yourself in the buyer's shoes is A lot of people feel very uncomfortable around salespeople. And so they start saying no for the customer because they feel like, ooh, I don't want to be pushy, or I don't want to sound this, or I'm afraid to approach them about that, or I already called them twice. And we start to worry about things that they're maybe not worrying about. So be careful not to be too empathetic in the way that you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, because you may talk yourself out of following up because you're perceiving something you might feel that they're not feeling at all. So yes, be empathetic and conscientious and do what you know is right and how you would want to be treated, of course, but be careful not to overdo it to the point where you shut yourself down from saying and doing certain things that can get you a sale. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. See, I want to be the dear Abby of our sales world. Is there any other questions? You can stump the speaker.
I don't really have a question. I think I heard a lot of things that I actually now feel better about how I go about doing sales, because I have been doing some things right. But I do recall, and I agree, that I lost sales before because I'm a talker. So I had to, once I saw a couple of, sort of faces kind of gloss over, then
Yes.
I practice listening more. And what I really like now is the questions that you've provided help not just listening, but then I can guide the conversation with the questions. So that's really helpful.
You said it perfectly. When I speak in person, I give people prizes. So then when I meet you, I'll give you a free bob. This is Bob.
Wow.
Whoop, whoop.
So I'll send you the prize, but you can't catch it because it's on a
Okay.
screen. But I love, did you hear the words that you said that I say all the time? Sales is nothing more than guiding through questioning. Listen, align, guide through questioning. That's all sales is. So take the stigma out of it. And since this is a small enough group, if there's just one thing that is your favorite one thing, I know yours is guiding through questions. And I know we heard that, about follow-up, follow-up, follow-up. Does anybody else have something to add that they're going to do based on this session as we finish?
I like that when you say never say no. So
Yeah.
the buyer, they could say no, but not you.
That's right. And when they do say no, you can agree with them, and then you can flip it with unless, right?
Yes, yes.
Because those who prepare most win, and now you're prepared with something to say when they say no, whereas before you didn't have something to say when they said no, as opposed to, well, what about this, and what about that, and what about this, and
Yeah, that's true, but win. Stuff like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other last comments before we finish?
Mine was sorry. Mine was just wondering.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
It's nice.
Yeah, I like to leave something unasked so that then I have a good reason to follow up again later as well.
I love it.
So sometimes there's a little thing that I say, oh, I can ask that later.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciated this because now I know the truth about the when, because I have a lot of open-ended things both for myself, because a lot of times I need a deadline as well to finish things.
Yes.
So I like the when. I was like, yeah, I need to ask the buyer when, and I also need to have a when for myself to provide as well.
So you can close and sell yourself.
Yeah. So I appreciate this.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I mean, basically, it's about walking with confidence in the direction of your dreams, acting as though it's impossible to fail because someone somewhere is looking for exactly what you have to offer. So you are definitely top notch, no question about it. And this has been Secret Weapon Selling 101. And I would love to connect with you. So this is my email. My website, of course, would be joybaldridge.com. And I'm always looking for referrals, as you should be looking for referrals. So if you know anybody, I have about 55 clients in Grand Cayman. I work with a company called Top Notch Training and Development, and I'm usually there 2 weeks every month. But because of the pandemic, I came back to the U.S. to be here with my family. So let's connect, you know, email me and let me know how you're doing. Email me and ask me a question. I don't charge for that. I'm going to be in sales the rest of my life. I think I got another 30, 40 years to go. So let's keep it all going. And if you know people who could use a seminar, I don't just speak about sales. I speak about all kinds of business issues, leadership and communication and team building and such. But I'd be happy to help people you know. But regardless of that, email me. Let's keep in touch. I can encourage and support you. And I'm happy to do it because someone does it for me and did it for me. And it's important that we all help one another.
Thank you so much, Joy. This has been a really great session, and thank you everyone on the call for joining us for this first session at Business of Art. If you haven't already signed up for Joy's full series through July, do send me an email. I'm at education@nationalgallery.org.ky. You all will have the email already because you've signed up for this one. But if you haven't signed up for the next session, which is going to be on negotiation, and then the following one, which is success with less stress, do let me know. Just shoot me an email and I'll put you on the list. So thank you so much, everyone. We hope that you have a great evening and that you got a lot out of this session.
Thank you. Bye. Happy selling.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.